Hello, everyone. This is David, and tonight's movie that we watched is the 2012 horror film Hypothermia. Now, I didn't have a lot of expectations going into this film. I honestly, until I looked at kind of up its description, I didn't even know that there was going to be a monster in this movie. I thought it was just going to be about a movie about, well, quite frankly, hypothermia. But turns out there's more to it than just that. There is, in fact, a monster, and I don't know why. It's very strange. So, the monster in this movie is basically like a pike man. And by pike man, I mean like a fish man. Um, it's a humanoid fish. I'm calling it a pike because big, aggressive, mean looking fish, but I don't think that's accurate. It doesn't look like a pike per se. It's got black skin. The monster effects in this are actually kind of poor. It's obviously a man in a suit. The suit doesn't look particularly impressive. It honestly looks like a painted over, like, for lack of a better term, painted over like bodysuit, like a thicker bodysuit with like frills and a funny head attached. It does the effects on the monster aren't particularly good or convincing, and you see some interesting money shots of it. So I was kind of wondering what they were thinking with this one. The plot on this one is pretty simple, all things considered. Um, it's a family plus a couple extras out on a lake in Maine. There's a killer monster out that's tracking them, hunting them, and there's problems ensue. The monster itself doesn't really have any special powers other than he can apparently survive in cold temperatures. He doesn't really care for the light. He's not hurt by it or anything. He just doesn't particularly like it. Um, he's apparently poisonous. Is We're not really entirely certain, but he is allegedly poisonous. We're never sure where he comes from or what exactly he is, other than a fish man. The characters never really look into it too quickly or too well because, well, they're not scientists. They don't have equipment. They're just a family plus a couple extras, like I said, out on the ice, if you will. So the the interesting thing about this is, well, it's kind of just a strange idea for a film. I haven't seen any horror movies that are about ice fishing before, as far as I'm aware. So that's kind of different. I've seen another movie that actually reminds me a lot of this movie relatively recently, a few months ago, called Beneath, which I like to think of Beneath and Hypothermia as kind of like sister movies, if you will. Uh, Beneath is a movie about a giant killer pike, not a pike man, just a giant pike, like 20 feet long. We're talking like a shark-sized pike, like a great white-sized pike, living in a lake. That picks off these teens that are in this boat that went out boating. Um, and perhaps sometime I will watch that again and do a review of that. It's an indie film. I believe this one is an indie film as well. Not entirely certain, but it's a little weird. Anyway, we should get to the movie because we've been talking for a little bit now. So the premise is, Ray is this fisherman who's been ice fishing out in this thing, and he's got his whole family. His wife Helen, his son, what is it? David, and his son's girlfriend Gina. Uh, so they're all out ice fishing. The night before, Ray fell into the water. He fell into basically one of the lake man's traps, which is the title for the creatures, I guess, lake man. And he fell into one of the traps, and he got stranded out there. And he only got found because he got late. He was late for dinner, and they went out to find him. Which at first they can't find him, and I'm like, where he was when the wife came out to talk to him, tell him dinner's ready. Before he came in, he was like 20 feet out from the dock that they had, and he fell in about 20 feet out from the dock. And there's like a clear shot. Like the lake's not twisty and turny or anything weird. So I don't know why it took him so long to find him, but it did. Anyway, so they rescue him. They bring him back. He's fine. Next day they go out. They're ice fishing. They're not catching anything. And this crazy guy of Steve Coate and Stevie Jr., his son, come out on this truck, and they leave like basically a little house on a trailer out on the ice, and they come back with snowmobiles. And it turns out they're here to fish like no tomorrow. They got all sorts of they're decked out to the nines. They got like this like generators and lights and everything. And they see stuff under the ice, and they think it's weird. And it like basically goes after their hooks, and they snap the hooks. And because of this, the Coates they make a bigger hole in the ice. Excuse me. Make a bigger hole in the ice, like a huge, like man-sized hole, because the thing in there's huge, and they want to catch it. So, long story short, the creature comes out. It attacks Stevie, cuts him on like his arm. Well, it doesn't actually attack him. Like he gets pulled in at one point. I forget exactly how. I think he was fishing with something, but he gets pulled in. He gets cut. He sees the thing. He gets pretty sick. The cut's pretty bad. He's bleeding pretty heavily, and apparently he's starting to have delusions. So that's no good. And they all end up going over there because of the thing coming out and attacking people. That's a little weird. They end up in the house. Well, they come over to the house for like a dinner or something before they head in. And what ends up happening is they find out that Stevie's actually worse off than they thought. Something ends up getting out of the pool, out of the hole that they made. Stevie ends up getting dragged in. This causes Stephen, his father, to go nuts and decide he needs to kill this thing. Excuse me. So he's got guns out. He's trying to lure it out. Turns out it's attracted to like the sounds they're making on the water. That night, they're trying to figure out what they're gonna do. Stephen gets killed by the thing. It gets ripped apart. They're laying down. David's trying to is kind of like traumatized by this. He's like, we should go. They don't. They're like, yeah, we'll be safe in here. And then a hand reaches up from one of the internal holes that they had because they cut holes down into the ice in the thing itself, and like basically like slits his throat. So Dave dies. He's dead. Gina's going nuts. Ray goes nuts. Like, losing your son. Like, it's not good. So the next day, like, eventually daylight comes. They start going back to the shoreline. Ray tries to lead it off while they're following. He falls through the ice. The thing tries to go out through the hole he made. He holds it in, and he dies. And they get back to the shore, or more or less the shore, and they curl up, and the thing just roars at them. Comes up, and it's going to kill them, it looks like. And they kind of huddle together, and it doesn't kill them for some reason. The mother basically tells it they've lost everything and that it's just protecting their territory, and they understand that. And never really clear as to why it doesn't attack them, but it doesn't. You're not sure if it's what the mother was saying, or if they were just outside its territory, or if it was daytime, or who knows what, because we never get a good set of rules on what this monster can and can't do exactly. We don't really spend enough time with it. So they get to live. This movie's very meh. I mean, as far as I know, it's an independent movie, so I wasn't expecting great things. I didn't really know what to expect. The monster costume is kind of subpar. It's a less interesting version of the Gill Man. The face especially looks pretty bad. So, but if you can get past that, and you've ever been on a lake ice fishing before, this will have some interesting connotations. I've done ice fishing out, uh, not recently, but before. My brother is actually quite big into it. He likes to go out for quite a long time, and he's a big fisherman anyway. But he likes to do all that kind of crazy stuff, and they do a lot of crazy stuff out on the ice. So making a horror movie about crazy stuff happening out on the ice, not the worst idea. Anyway, so this movie is I'd give it like a solid like 4 out of 10 I'd say. I should really start a rating system, I suppose. Just rating every movie on how much I like it. And I think I'll do that from now on. Start rating every movie. So we'll see more of that. 4 out of 10. It's below average in terms of monster quality. You do get to the monster's definitely a menace for the whole movie, and you feel his presence. But in terms of presentation, he doesn't have any special powers, no real special abilities, and there's no reason ever given for why he's in this lake. This isn't like some random lake everyone decided to go to. It's the lake they go to every year. He's just there today for some reason. No reason given. They're just like, you ever seen anything like this? Nope, never. Alright, weird. And there are houses on the lake, so it's not like a super remote in the middle of nowhere lake or anything like that. It's just they posit a few ideas, but again, nothing concrete ever comes of it. So it's unfortunate. But again, it's like an independent film, so you gotta kind of give it at least a little bit of a pass because these people aren't building things with a super huge budget. It's basically bare basics here. And for what it's worth, it's not a terrible film. It's not great by any stretch of the imagination. Not a lot of rewatch value or anything like that, but at the same time, I've seen far, far worse Sci-Fi Channel movies, and the fact that they use practical effects, albeit not great practical effects, but they use them, is appreciated. So, I definitely say check this out if the premise intrigues you, but otherwise, it's you can get by without this one. It's completely ignorable if you are not in the mood for this sort of film. Anyway, folks, that's all I got for today, so good night.